We often hear about autism in the context of outward behaviors, like things like repetitive movements or difficulty with social interaction. But what about the struggles that aren't so visible? The internal battles, the constant efforts to navigate a world that wasn't really designed for neurodiversity.
Hmm.
That's exactly what we're diving into today, right? The concept of high masking autism.
Yeah.
So we're going deep, deep, deep into an article called Only Autistic People Who Don't Mask Need Support, Debunking a Common Myth from Cheap ABA. Get ready to challenge some assumptions and hopefully spark a little more empathy, along the way.
Yeah, absolutely.
So think of high masking like social camouflage. It's about blending in, appearing neurotypical, even when it takes like a Herculean amount of effort. Are you with us so far?
Absolutely. And it's crucial to understand this isn't just about, occasionally putting on a brave face. For high-masking autistic individuals, it's a constant, exhausting performance. Imagine being, like, on stage all the time, carefully curating every word, every gesture, every facial expression to fit in.
Wow, that's a powerful image. Like an actor who never gets to leave the stage,
Yeah.
even when they're completely drained.
Exactly. And the article that we're unpacking today, it really emphasizes this point about the immense effort involved. It gives this example of someone meticulously planning out conversations beforehand, almost like they're writing a script in their head.
That's incredible. I mean, I overthink the occasional text message, but to approach every interaction with that level of like meticulous planning,
Yeah.
it's exhausting just thinking about it.
Absolutely. And that constant pressure can like manifest in some really tough ways. We're talking, heightened anxiety, increased risk of depression, and even something called autistic burnout, which we'll dive into a bit later.
Okay, so we're already starting to see a hidden costs here.
Yeah.
But I have to admit, when I first started reading about this, I kept wondering, like, if someone seems fine on the surface, if they're navigating the world, seemingly without a hitch, why does it even matter if they're masking? Like, what's the big deal?
That's such a common misconception, and it gets right to the heart of why high masking can be so insidious. It creates this illusion of, being fine that masks an internal turmoil going on beneath the surface.
It's like they become so good at playing the role that everyone, even themselves sometimes, forgets it's a performance.
Precisely. And because of that, it can be easy to overlook the profound impact it has on their well-being. It's like running a marathon every single day. Eventually, your body, your mind, your spirit, they simply can't keep up.
So it's not just about the immediate discomfort, it's the long-term consequences to their mental health.
Absolutely. But it goes even deeper than that. The article highlights how this pressure to mask, to conform, it often prevents individuals from seeking the support they desperately need. They might not even realize they need support because they've become so adept at appearing fine.
It's almost like they've internalized this message that their authentic self isn't acceptable, so they have to constantly strive to be someone they're not.
Exactly, and that takes a huge toll. The article actually uses the term camouflaging to describe this phenomenon, and I think it's so apt. It's like they're constantly trying to blend into the background, to become invisible, even though inside they're bursting with thoughts and feelings and experiences that they're desperate to share.
So how do we even begin to unpack this? If someone is so good at hiding their struggles, how can we as friends, family members, colleagues, even just fellow humans, how can we start to recognize the signs and offer support? It's like we're talking about a hidden epidemic almost. People struggling silently, feeling like they have to navigate these challenges alone because they've gotten so good at masking their true selves.
That's a powerful way to put it. And it's heartbreaking because it doesn't have to be this way. The article really emphasizes that recognizing the signs of high masking is often the first step towards getting people the support they need.
So let's talk about those signs. If someone's really good at masking, how can we even begin to recognize that there's something more going on beneath the surface?
No, it's not always easy. But the article highlights some things to watch out for. For instance, have you ever noticed someone who seems like incredibly drained after social situations, even if those situations seem, perfectly ordinary to you?
Oh, absolutely. I used to have this coworker who would be completely wiped out after team meetings. We'd all go grab coffee and chat afterward, but she'd always decline, saying she just needed some quiet time to recharge. At the time, I just figured she was, introverted. But now I'm wondering if there's more to it.
It's definitely possible. That kind of social exhaustion can be a major red flag, especially if it's coupled with other signs like difficulty forming close relationships or or a tendency to over-prepare for, like, social interactions.
It's like their social battery gets drained so much faster because they're putting so much energy into, like, masking their true selves.
Precisely.
Mhm.
And this constant pressure to mask can have other significant consequences. For instance, the article points out that high masking often leads to delayed diagnosis. People can go years, even decades, without realizing they're on the autism spectrum because they've become so adept at camouflaging their traits.
Which means that they're not getting the support and resources they need.
Exactly. And then there's the impact on mental health. We talked earlier about the risk of anxiety and depression, but one of the most concerning consequences is something called autistic burnout. Have you ever encountered that term before?
I've heard of burnout in general, of course, that feeling of being like completely overwhelmed and exhausted. But I'll admit, I'm not as familiar with autistic burnout specifically.
It's a state of intense physical, emotional, and mental exhaustion that's often triggered by the prolonged effort of masking.
Mm.
Imagine constantly trying to be someone you're not, suppressing your natural instincts and responses. It's like running a marathon in a costume that's way too tight. Eventually, something's got to give.
That's a powerful analogy.
And it's important to understand that autistic burnout can manifest in a lot of different ways. The article mentions things like sensory overload, meltdowns, shutdowns, even physical symptoms like insomnia and digestive problems. And it's often described as like a period of intense vulnerability where someone might need more support and understanding than usual.
It sounds incredibly
Right.
debilitating. And like you said earlier, if someone doesn't even realize they're on the autism spectrum, they might not connect these experiences to autistic burnout. They might just feel broken or like they're failing somehow.
Exactly. And that's why it's so crucial to raise awareness about high masking and its impact, right?
Mhm.
Because when we understand the challenges, we can start to create a more supportive and compassionate environment for everyone on the spectrum, regardless of how they present.
Absolutely.
Mm.
So, knowing the toll it takes, how can we better support individuals with high masking autism? So much of what we've been talking about today seems to come back to like creating understanding the invisible struggles, the internal battles. But what does that understanding actually look like in action? How can we move beyond simply recognizing the signs and start offering meaningful support to those around us who might be high masking?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And the article does a great job of outlining some tangible steps we can take. First and foremost, it emphasizes the importance of challenging our own assumptions about what autism, should look like.
I think that's something we all struggle with, right? Like we have these preconceived notions based on like media portrayals or maybe limited personal experiences, and you can
Yeah.
get like stuck in those narrow definitions.
Absolutely. And those assumptions can be incredibly limiting, both for individuals on the spectrum and for our understanding of autism as a whole. Remember, autism is a spectrum for a reason. It presents so differently in different people. There's no one like right way to be autistic.
So how do we break free from those assumptions? Is it about like seeking out more diverse representations of autism, educating ourselves about the wide range of experiences?
Yeah. Exactly. The more we expose ourselves to the diversity within the autism community, the more we dismantle those limiting stereotypes and make space for authentic understanding. And that leads to the next crucial step, listening to autistic people.
It's interesting you say that because one thing that really struck me in the article was the emphasis on lived experience. It kept coming back to the idea that the best way to understand high masking is to listen to those who are living it every day.
And that's so powerful, isn't it? Because when we center the voices of autistic people, especially those who are often overlooked or misunderstood, we gain such valuable insights into their experiences and their needs. And it shifts the power dynamic from, us trying to understand them to a place of shared learning and mutual respect.
It creates a space for dialogue rather than assumptions. I love that. So practically speaking, what does that look like if we want to be better allies, better friends, better colleagues? What are some like concrete things we can do to create that supportive environment?
The article really stresses the importance of small, everyday acts of kindness and understanding. It could be something as simple as, asking someone how they're doing and genuinely listening to their response without, judgment or interruption, or or offering flexibility and accommodations when someone needs them, whether it's taking a break from a noisy environment or communicating in a way that works best for them.
It's about recognizing that everyone has different needs and preferences, and what might seem like a small gesture to us can make a world of difference to someone who's constantly navigating a world that wasn't, designed for them.
Beautifully said. And remember, creating a supportive environment also means challenging stigma and misinformation when we see it. Whether it's, gently correcting a harmful stereotype or speaking up when someone's experience is being dismissed, those actions, however small they may seem, can have like a ripple effect.
It's about using our voices to amplify the voices of those who are often silenced or marginalized. And sometimes it's about being quiet and listening, really truly listening to what others are trying to tell us.
Exactly. And at the end of the day, it comes back to that fundamental message of recognizing the humanity in each other, regardless of how our differences might manifest.
That's such a powerful note to end on. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the often hidden world of high-massing autism, we want to leave you with this final thought.
Yeah.
How often do we make assumptions about people based solely on what we see on the surface? And what if we all challenge ourselves to dig a little deeper, to listen a little closer, and to approach each other with a little more compassion and understanding? That's all the time we have for today's deep dive. Thank you for joining us on this journey of discovery. And until next time, keep asking questions, keep challenging assumptions, and keep learning.